No. The efforts of the club here. First, I'm sorry that I was not able to fill out the questionnaire. Obviously, as Kim so kindly pointed out, 4:45 yesterday I did file my papers. However, we're now moving forward with that decision. One of the reasons, for those of you who don't know me, I got my start a long time ago, and I'm very thankful not only to the Harvey Milk Club, but also to Tom Army out of the first campaign I worked on in San Francisco was 1998, in Tom's supervisorial campaign back when it was citywide. Thankfully, he beat Mabel Tang, and thankfully, he was president of the board. Those days have changed. A lot has changed since then. Tom actually introduced me to Matt Gonzalez and encouraged me to run his 2000 campaign. After that, I helped Tom with Proposition O and also debated our current beloved mayor, Mr. Newsom, around Care Not Cash. Since then, worked on the 2003 mayoral campaign and now direct a public safety program here in the city and also inspect homeless shelters for the city. So part of the drive for Mai to run for mayor is because I think we need to get a little less PR and more policy. I think that unfortunately with Mayor Newsom recently, it's been sort of governance by press release. Right. And I think we actually need to get to some real substance on some real issues. In my experience working around homelessness, one of the main issues, and this is actually one of the things that drove me to finalize the decision to run. For those of you who recently saw the C.W. Nevius series of horrendous articles scapegoating homeless individuals as either drug users, alcoholics, or otherwise, there was a huge push on the city's part to then, oh my God, we need to go out to Golden Gate Park, we need to actually clear them out and do something. Why? Because there's bad press about it. And they're so sensitive to bad press, they actually make really poor decisions. They closed and they lied to folks. 150 Otis is a 70-bed single adult shelter. They closed and kicked out every one of those 70 residents of that shelter and told them that because of permitting reasons, that shelter was going to be closed for 4 months. 2 days later, they reopened it for the folks in Golden Gate Park so that they could use it as a staging ground and open it as a 24-hour shelter, not open to the general population, only open to those individuals from Golden Gate Park. I have clients who came to me and said, because they couldn't get services when they were actually in the shelter, they went to go stand out in the park for a while, because then they'd get contact and then they'd get housing preference. That's actually behind the scenes of what's happening regarding homelessness. It's a shell game that's been put forth by the Newsom administration. And I think it's long overdue for that conversation to happen, long overdue to actually analyze the effects of Care Not Cash, long overdue to actually have the real conversation behind sort of the statistics, behind sort of the great presentation, behind sort of the PowerPoint of the budget, the back to basics and what have you. Basic services aren't being provided. Uni's more unreliable than it was previously. So I think these are real policy issues that I actually look to, and I'm hoping that the Milk Club can really take progressive stances and really drive that conversation with the mayor. My goal in having this campaign is to drive a progressive conversation and have a dialogue that I actually don't think is happening right now in the city. We have horrendous amounts of violence. We have increasing homicide rates since 2004, since he took office. And there's horrendous morale in the police department, and yet there's not really a public conversation about it. In addition, I can't remember the last time the mayor held an open press conference where he actually took questions from a pool of reporters. He doesn't do it. He doesn't come to the Board of Supervisors. He doesn't actually answer the question times. He's had a series of essentially campaign re-election forums around various issues out in the neighborhoods where he hand-picks the questions. This is not my type of government. This is not sort of the vision I have for San Francisco as far as how things should be governed. I think as a chief executive, if you have policy ideas or things that you want to put forward, then stand behind them and discuss them. Stand behind them and let's have an honest conversation about what's really happening in the city. Stand behind them and actually really engage the citizenry and not sort of have it just be done by press release. For the longest time, I actually thought Nathan Ballard was the mayor. I hear more from Nathan Ballard than I do from Mayor Newsom himself. Now, I'm happy he enjoys the mayoral position, and I'm not going to speak about the Alex Turk situation, but part of that, I mean, one of the shameful things that we should all note, if there was one person in that administration that would have took a bullet for the mayor, it was Alex Turk.
That's true.
So I think that's sort of the poor judgment and sort of a lack of vision that I think is sort of happening. I'd like to stand behind the idea of having more policy, less PR, and actually governance. I'm happy that people talk about him wanting to become governor. More than happy for it. But you know what? In the meantime, can you manage the city effectively? It would be wonderful if you could. That's sort of what
break it down.
So with that being said, that's sort of what I'm hoping that this candidacy can sort of be about. That's sort of what I'm hoping we can sort of drive a conversation collectively. I looked at the Harvey Milk Club to actually define sort of what progressive is. I'm really old with the idea of liberal. Liberal to me is sort of just a left-leaning version of the status quo. Progressive is moving things forward, and I think the city is long overdue to actually move things forward. I don't think Mayor Newsom's a progressive mayor. And
Thank you.
I think that conversation has to be honestly held here in the city and honestly named. And I think part of that is, since we're not actually acknowledging the true issues that are facing the city, we actually can't come up with true solutions. And until we start to really name some of the issues that are facing him, until he actually comes out and names them, not just rote recitation of wonderful statistics and PowerPoint presentations, then I don't think the city is really going to come to grips with what it can be and really develop into the city it needs to be.
Nice.
Great, thank you so much.
Woo! Break it down.
All right, so let's go with, I haven't started with Terry yet. I have Tab, I have Maxine, I have Shona. Anybody else? I have Sean. Let's put Shona, and then Sean. Okay,
Sean
before me if you want. Okay, Sean before.
You can put me last. I'm always talking.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. I'm sorry, Bob. All right, starting with Terry.
Hi, thanks for coming. You know, I just thought of something that I probably should have said to the other candidates too. There's something you can get online, I believe, that you may be able to use during your campaign, and it's the mayor appearing on a show called Sarah and No Name After Dark, and doing things like showing his little chest hairs and talking to these women who think he's so cute and all this stuff. And then he was on again. I was flipping through the channels and I thought it was a rerun of the same one. Unfortunately, I got the tape in too late because he said, yeah, the reason I'm slurring my words tonight is because I have a back injury from baseball and I'm on painkillers. So you should look that up online, Sarah and No Name After Dark. Write that down. And I believe you can see the video or look at it, and there may be some material in there that you can use. And I just thought of it, and like I said, I should have told that to all the candidates because it's just absolutely disgusting. It's what it is.
Well, and I think, not to respond completely to that, but I think one thing to quite frankly hold the mayor accountable to, if any of you remember in 2004, he did publicly say that if the homicide rate increased, folks should hold him accountable for it.
That's right.
And the homicide rate has only increased since 2004.
That's right.
And so it's time to hold them accountable for it and for what that kind of management has led to. I think there's a conversation right now that's happening in Newark. They're suffering from extreme amounts of violence, and that mayor is being held accountable, and he's publicly engaging folks around how to create solutions. He's not hiding behind press releases. He's not letting his department heads handle that issue. He himself is engaged in that, and that's the kind of engagement I'm expecting out of the mayor.
Thanks. Tab?
Quinton, a lot of us here know you, and your name has gotten out over the years in the community, but you don't necessarily have the average name recognition that the supervisors do. So I'd like to know, what sort of base are you starting with in your campaign, and what is your plan for expanding that so you have a real basis of sorting the campaign?
Yes, I think to answer that first part of the question, which is you're right, it's been involved in election task force on redistricting, other sort of things that have been lower level, gain your name out and what have you. The conversations I've had in the last week have been a lot of core folks who have supported Daley's campaign, Matt's campaign, Tom's campaign, who are looking, and I think part of the challenge of this campaign has been the fact that no one's stepping up to say there's not a progressive dialogue that's happening. And so working off of that base of core activists and core folks to then say, how can we use The Guardian? How can we use Beyond Crime? How can we use alternative ways of actually putting a message out to say that the Chronicle's article today that a cast of characters in Gavin Newsom is actually incorrect. It's not just a cast of characters. Yes, it's nice to focus on the fact there's a wolf in the race, there's a chicken in the race, there's a grasshopper in the race. God bless San Francisco, right? Having said that, there are also well-qualified candidates indeed who can also bring sort of a message to that, and that's how I'm going to hopefully get my name out and start to build that campaign.
Sean?
Hi. I'd like to know what would you as mayor do in crime, particularly murder, in the city, and particularly in the southeast corridor of the city.
Yeah, and I think there's multiple levels to that question. I think the first and foremost is right now I direct a public safety program. We have staff throughout the city. So I'm lucky enough and privileged enough to travel to almost every neighborhood on a regular basis, from Visitation Valley to Bayview to Western Addition, especially around some of the public housing sites. 2 years ago there was a promise that we would have community policing. We still don't have community policing in San Francisco. For those of you who are aware, the police department is broken into 10 separate districts. Depending upon how the captain chooses to delegate his officers and his resources, that's their version of community policing. So I think first and foremost we need to solidify in the Department General Orders community policing. That's affecting first and foremost the people's relationship. When the police department says they actually can't get and make any arrests for crimes and no one trusts them, there's a reason why no one trusts them. And I think unless they actually acknowledge that and move forward in trying to bridge the gap